Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Tom.
And my name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com.
How we doing, fellas?
Good.
Good.
Yeah, good.
So good.
Yeah.
So good.
I
mean, the world is collapsing around us, but like I'm doing great. Like I've had a coffee.
Yeah.
It's 3:00, so I'm awake. Like let's go. Let's talk politics,
Yeah,
Let's
I'm
launch
doing
into it.
great. I'm finally getting around to having my brat summer by finding this brat themed IPA in the shop.
I don't
which is great. I think it was really rude.
I
back
wish
in,
you, the listener,
September.
could see the kind of like,
What?
the kind of like benevolent, but also like I'm like charmed by Tom's. Like the kind of smile that I'm giving him, it's kind of like it's like it's benevolent and it's got a hint of sauciness. I'm like, okay, what's he gonna say next? All right, here it comes. I wish you, the listener, could see that smile, but you can't. So
All right, well,
just
maybe
have
they
to
can
imagine
hear it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just kind of rude. I felt that back in September when everyone in America said like, and Brat summer is over. And I was like, fuck you all. The Southern Hemisphere hasn't had its summer yet since the launch of Charlie XCX's seminal album, Brat. I'm having my Brat summer.
Well, as we can see from the wildfires in Los Angeles, the summer continued and continued and continued and turned into a wildfire season. So you might have heard that Los Angeles is burning down like the coastal.
We're jumping into there.
Throwing out the rundown.
Throwing out the rundown already.
Throwing
How
out the
far
rundown.
into we?
Rundown's gone. Goodbye.
Less than 2 minutes, and you've already skipped story one to go to story
We'll get to it. It appears as though Bill Hicks's dreams of Arizona Bay might yet be realized, with Los Angeles and California burning and falling away into the sea. There are several like sort of historic sites in LA that have been that are endangered. One of those being the Getty Center and Villa museums that house some of the most priceless pieces of art in the Los Angeles area.
I thought literally the Hollywood sign, I think, is also
seeing the literal Hollywood sign burn down might be the best Call of Duty waiting screen I've ever laid eyes on. That might be the perfect one.
Well, yeah, I mean, it says there's a lot of interesting, like, what are we calling it? Late stage capitalism metaphors, I feel, coming out of the imagery from this. Like
a lot of nihilistic millennials,
McDonald's.
wholly unconcerned with the fall of society, just kind of like memeing as the world ends, which is might be the most millennial thing
response.
Most millennial response to the end of the world that one could possibly conceive. So there's that footage where it's like a McDonald's somewhere in LA, and it's just like the trees are burning. It's like a fire hurricane going on around it, and it just looks like the end times.
It just kind of looks like if you asked someone just to create an artistic representation of America's hubris coming home to roost.
It's a weird, tragic metaphor, but it's sort of there. I guess
the producers of This Is the End was probably so mad that they wasted all that time creating all of the the B-roll of the fake hellscape, when all they needed to do was wait around a little while and it would manifest itself, for free.
So I didn't realize this, but like it hasn't rained in Los Angeles for like months.
They've had 1 millimeter of rain in like 6-8 months, something like that.
Just crazy.
Yeah.
Right.
And this always happens when, like, because here in Australia we have some epic fire seasons as well. Like we've had devastating burns like this. And whenever anyone talks about like, hey, so climate change is making these worse, and everyone's like, but an arsonist started it, or whatever. Like they always say, it was a man-made beginning. What Adam just said is the exact reason that climate change does affect it. If it hasn't rained in ages, it means that the ground is dry. I think in California as well over the winter, the humidity has dropped considerably, drying out everything a bit more. Because like it's their winter at the moment. Like this is when it's meant to be at its coldest, but everything's so dry.
Fire season in California should be done by like October, maybe November at the absolute latest. To have it happening in January is like it's a really sad state of affairs.
And then combined with the winds and all that, it's the perfect conditions just for something this absolutely devastating. And I believe also the way a lot of homes are constructed up there as well because of all the earthquakes.
A lot more wood construction.
More like flexible kind of structures to better handle the quakes that happen under the San Andreas fault line.
It just doesn't
where does Los Angeles get their water from? Like, what's their actual drinking water source? Is it desal, or have they got, or do they pump it across the country from a lake somewhere?
There are reservoirs.
There are reservoirs.
My understanding of this, because I guess to jump back to the lead on this, is one of the big issues with fighting these fires, because a lot of them were burning out of control, is that they were running out of, the firefighters were running out of water to use to fight the fires.
Well, that was because the hydrants are designed
we're running dry.
Because they're designed for 1 or 2 house fires. They're not designed to fight for a wildfire.
The whole city being on fire.
They're loaded up for
But also, there's some crazy, awful, capitalism's going to kill us all reasons as to why that's happening as well. I think the big one that a lot of people have been arguing over is due to the Resnicks. The Resnicks are a couple of California billionaires who run a company. What's it called? Wonderful Company. Which, that's
some Orwell would just
grim.
Explode with Orwell would just be incandescent with rage if he saw that.
Yeah, but I believe the Wonderful Company is apparently one of the largest, maybe the even largest agricultural company in the world, and they grow things among other fruits and vegetables. They grow pistachios and almonds, which takes a shit ton of water to grow.
Yeah.
Yes, and they struck a deal in the mid-90s. It's called the Kern deal, which I'll quote. Who's this? Rolling Stone. They struck a deal in 1994 during what critics described as backroom meetings, and it allowed the Resnicks to reserve enough water for their farm empire and to sell water back to the state in times of drought.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Effectively. I listened to a podcast about the Resnicks a couple of years ago, and I remember thinking it was fucked, but it was along the lines of not only did they reserve a bunch of water for themselves, it's like they reserved water they didn't have yet. It was they were just stockpiling paper water. And so they just have all the water, and it's if you want to use water to fight the fires, you got to buy it from us.
Tom, I don't know if you know this about capitalism, but the number must go up.
Number
has to go up. And if that means private companies get to buy water futures and sell it back to public institutions for money, then that's what the invisible hand of the market intended. This is what Adam Smith wanted.
Not like the Murray-Darling Basin at all.
No, not at all.
So just for reference, the Los Angeles gets its water from a number of different areas. So there's groundwater, there's local surface water. They also import a bunch of water through aqueducts. So from the Colorado River, through this thing called the Los Angeles Aqueduct, and there's this thing called the State Water Project. So
there's actually a really long, interesting history with LA and water, because Los Angeles is a city that is it's kind of weird. It's right at the edge of the country. Obviously, it's California is the westernmost state of the United States. There's also a mountain range of the Sierra Nevada mountains, which sort of abut it on one side. And then it's desert for a substantial amount in any direction from there, sort of eastwards. So there's been a lot of, sort of corruption and fuckery. I remember 99% Invisible did a whole thing about the LA River, which is they concreted it up. It was essentially this big river that would run through the middle of the city, and whenever it would overflow, it would just fuck everything up. And so they concreted it over, and that's that. Remember that scene in Terminator 2? Where he's got the shotgun on the motorbike and he's riding around that concrete canal. That's the LA River now. Half the time it's empty. It's more just a sluice gate. So there's all this weird power and politics and crime that's caught up with LA and its water and that. And if I recall correctly, the movie Chinatown, the Jack Nicholson movie from the 70s, is all about the central crime and corruption that's going on in that film underlying. I think they're the detective's hunting for a murder, and as he does, his crime I was going to say crime research, his investigation. It uncovers this big sprawling like water, like, you know, politicians buying up, you know, land rights for water and all this sort of stuff. This sort of crooked, you know, politics deal that's happened without anyone knowing. So yeah, it is very much sort of like baked into the culture there, but it is interesting to see how all of these concerns and all of these, like, this long simmering undercurrent of like corruption and dealings around water have like all of a sudden kind of like come to the forefront now as a result of this fire. Because it was interesting, like Gavin Newsom, California's governor, was on Pod Save America the other day. He was being interviewed. They went to the emergency center and interviewed him. And basically he's just like, yeah, we're all trying to figure out who did this. And everyone's like, it's like, yeah, we've announced an inquiry and there's all these different, you know, we put together a 100-point plan and, you know, we accepted, you know, 100% of the recommendations of those plans and implemented them and put more money in for this. And I was like, right. But like people are concerned as to why their city burnt down and you don't seem to have any answers as to like why there was no water in the pumps. And he's like, hey, we're all trying to get to the bottom of it together. I was like, well, you're the governor, man. Like you should have the answer. But
what freaks me out is that like the media coverage isn't like, I mean, there's been tens of thousands of homes that have burnt down, right? But
the Palisades, which is like a very wealthy neighborhood where a lot of a wealthy area where a lot of celebrities live, has been essentially just wiped out. Yeah. Like you can see, you know, from maps and stuff. Like there's whole just areas of neighborhoods that have been decimated.
Yeah.
Yes. My point is that like what concerns me is that in Australia the coverage isn't about some of these larger issues. A lot of the coverage is, Adam Brody lost his house. So did Paris Hilton. And it's like, okay, like that's sad for sure. But also, how is that the headline? Like
Governor Schwarzenegger lost his house and everyone's like, oh my God, are you okay, Arnold? It's like, Arnold's a millionaire. He's going to be fine.
He's going to be fine.
He's got insurance. He'll be okay. Like they'll be fine.
Have empathy for them because like, you know, there are material goods that you have in your home that like not things you can buy regardless how wealthy
photos, memories, family heirlooms. Like I am sympathetic. They're people, they lost their houses as well.
Yeah, it's like, but don't donate money to Paris Hilton. Yeah, like she'll be fine. It's all the regular people who are losing their shit. But also we should be talking about how we let people like the fucking Resnicks buy all the water. All these problems.
Like burying the lead pretty much. Like that's, I mean, I guess in Australia they've got to like have it angled for a foreign country, but still like, anyway,
like world-shattering, largest like fire disaster in a century. Is it like attention grabbing enough? They're gonna be like, no. But what happened to Paris Hilton? Like, what happened to the girl from A Simple Life? That's the angle that Australians want. Are we really that stupid? Maybe we are.
It's also super fucked because like there's also the issues of like services funding. Like, you know, they always pump more money into the cops. They're always taking money away from the fire department to the point where, you know, again, capitalist hellscape, private firefighting is an industry in California and America, and they deploy prisoners.
Oh yeah, that is a really grim part of it. Yeah, so explain that a little bit, Tom.
Like from what I understand, it's like it's a program that prisoners can volunteer to be a part of, and they get paid for it, but they get paid like $1 an hour or whatever. Like it's something fucked. So it's like basically bordering on slave labor. So putting them just in these really dangerous, in these really dangerous situations. And I see quotes like, I just saw one here from the Rolling Stone as well, where, you know, an article on why prisoners are opting to fight the fires, and a quote from one of them saying, well, no one treats us like inmates. I'm like, wow, okay. So like, why? I know you mean that to kind of be like, oh no, this program's good because I'm treated like an equal. It's like, it's more fucked that you're not treated like a human being. Like
the rest of the time.
Yes, you're in prison. Like I know there's a huge nuanced conversation about people being incarcerated and, you know, who may or may not have done terrible things, etc. But like the fact that you don't feel like a human being all the other times, so you're opting to go for the $25 a day job of maybe dying fighting fires is disgusting. Like it's like some Squid Game-esque manipulation,
A
right?
little
Of
bit,
like that
yeah.
you have the choice to do this or not, but we've put you in a really awful, terrible system to like
Yes.
push you to that choice.
That's the key.
Yeah, you don't know
It's-
what training or like what sort of like knowledge
Yeah.
they have to actually
Yeah.
fight some of these.
And-
I mean, are
and
they
I-
just like piling sandbags or like what are they actually doing?
And I
as
read there's
part of
stuff
this
like
role?
if you participate in the volunteer program to fight fires, maybe you'll get your record expunged at the end of your sentence so that you could become a firefighter post your sentence. I'm like, oh, so that more sounds like you're acknowledging it's difficult to get work after you've been incarcerated. And what's the fucking point of rehabilitating these people if you make it fucking difficult up? Oh, it's so... I hate this.
There is
I
a
hate it so much.
real problem with America and their, so after the 13th Amendment, that's the amendment that abolished slavery. When the 13th Amendment was put through, there was actually an exclusion specifically for prisoners, saying like, we don't have slaves, we don't have slavery, we don't have slave labor except for prisons. And that has kind of like grown and metastasized into this whole industry where I was listening to a podcast just recently. I think it was from 99% Invisible, which was talking about signs and sign making for...
Oh, yeah, and like license plates and stuff.
Yeah, well, license plates is
kinds
one
of
of them, but
things,
this was specifically talking about like highway signs, like the ones you see, like this exit in 1 kilometer, that sort of thing. And this whole industry that's been perpetuated in North Carolina off the back of essentially slave labor. And they go, well, as you say, Tom, they go, well, you've got the choice. You can participate or not in this work program. You don't have to. A company that turns over $21.5 million has less than $3 million in labor costs because they're just saving all this money on prison labor. And it's like
different.
a company that is like it's a private company, but their only client is government. So like there's a lot of like Russian nesting dolls of like weird corruption, and the incentives for the prisoners are not like, oh, you can do this if you want. It's like, this might be your only time to have like social contact. This might be the only way that you can get money together for your commissary. If you haven't got someone helping you from the outside, putting money in so you can like have other food and like any kind of like privileges.
So you can have any sense of dignity.
If you have it, exactly. Yeah. So it's really, there is an element of coercion to all of that as well, because it's not like, it's a free choice, but it's a free choice that if you don't make
literally
your life's going to be shit. So it's pretty
funny because in Australia, obviously, the society that we know today in Australia, I guess, was basically founded on convict labor. So same thing, slave labor. The difference being is, I guess, over time, people realized, like in the 1870s, they're like, this is pretty fucked. Let's stop that.
We still do it.
I mean, to an extent, yes, but you don't see convicts building half a city. Is my point.
Not building half a city.
You don't see chain gangs down the side of the road in Australia anymore.
No, but that details I don't know if I should share because they're a bit more personal. But
it's fine. But you've seen. I'm sure there are things that prisoners do. But my point being, like,
Tom's done hard time, is what he's saying. He's trying to. He didn't want to allude to it earlier. He's not trying not to blow up his spot, but he's a pretty hard crook. He can do 10 years at a stretch, and it's no big deal. So.
My point being is, like, I come from Hobart, where half of the city is convict built. Like, buildings. I mean, they've lasted. Like, good work.
They don't have that convict labor like they used to, mate. Nowadays everything just slapdash. They just throw it together.
And the other thing, obviously being is that because these are private prisons. Like, it's as you said, there's the fact that there's a profit margin at the end of that, as opposed to just like the public good.
There's a lot of people making money that aren't the prisoners, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is cooked. Now, anyway, that was our second story. We should move on to our main story this week, which is
equally as apocalyptic.
Equally as apocalyptic. Meta has come out. Mark Zuckerberg has come out and basically admitted that. Well, they've just given up. They've given up on content moderation, is basically the short version of it. But specifically, they've announced the end of their US fact-checking program, and they're going to start winding back the algorithms or the processes that they have in place that automatically, say, block or ban content on their platform.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that like they're dusting their hands of content moderation and fact checking, citing Twitter as the example as to why. That's insane. Like, yeah, because I guess what they're proposing is like rather than having like, you know, where they engage companies to do fact checking for them, which are done by professionals, journalists, all that sort of stuff. They instead want to implement a model that Twitter uses called community notes.
Which is basically like Wikipedia, like you guys fucking sort it amongst yourselves and then tag it.
Yeah, so people who have passed certain criteria, like moderation flags against your account, you've had an account for long enough, you've got a verified phone number or whatever, like there's some criteria to be a member of the community notes team. And then if you see something on Twitter that you're like, that's not true, and here are the sources to back it up, you can write that note. And then the group, the community of other users who fit that same criteria can then assess whether or not the majority agrees that yes, like your note on that post is accurate and it should be listed underneath it to provide context to maybe what someone said. It's why you've seen so
Meanwhile,
many
Trump
Elon
has already
Musk
won the
tweets.
election, so
yes. So you see so many Elon Musk tweets where Elon Musk says something and then a community note's like, that's actually not true. It's very funny seeing it used against him. It's delicious. Like, I think, George, you and I have said occasionally, like, community notes is one of the best things that's ever popped up in Twitter for that very reason.
it is good for irony value. Yeah, I don't know if it replaces a content moderation team, but it is certainly very funny when it happens.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, it is very good for what it does.
Yes.
However, the rest of Twitter is like a wretched hive of scum and villainy and neo-Nazis because it doesn't cover everything and it is slow, which is what a lot of the critics have said about it, that it's like, you know, the damage of a disinformation tweet or
it's already gone around. I mean, that's what I was making the joke of
is
before.
instant.
Yeah, exactly.
The
The lie has gone around the world 6 times before the community note pops up. And I also don't agree with the
And sometimes
assertion.
they can't agree with each other.
Well,
Like
and that's the thing.
Note,
it's like
people debate so much that no note appears on it, and the damage is done.
Yeah, it could be a contentious issue where it's like, say for example, it's
not
like Israel-Palestine, where it's like 2 different sides of the issue have 2 completely different perspectives, and they can't reach a consensus and that's why on those pages on Wikipedia for contentious issues like that, they'll say this page has been locked and won't be accepting any further edits, and basically because 2 sides of an issue have been going at it and like, you know, trying to edit each other out of existence, and then they've basically Wikipedia or
anywhere, but
or whatever has had to say like,
not,
we're not going to engage in further discussion on this particular topic for that reason. So it certainly does not replace fact checking. And the thing that really galls me about all of this is that fact checking is additive speech. It's not like the whole thing is they're saying, you know, Meta is saying, starting in the US, we are ending our third-party fact-checking program and moving to a community notes model. And the allegation that they're making is that it's, you know, censorious to have fact-checkers, which is nonsense because fact-checking by definition is additive speech. Okay? You've said they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs, they're eating the pets that live there. And we have done the research and looked around and asked people, are their pets being eaten? And people have said no. And then we've added that information on top of the thing that you have said, which is the false thing, and called it false. Yeah. That is what fact-checking is. It is by definition
George,
not censorious.
You've treaded on my freedom.
No, not at all.
Not okay. No.
And it's so funny because like all the articles will say like, oh, you know, the conservatives are saying like fact checking is like censorious to them. And I was like, you're telling on yourself. Well, you're absolutely telling on yourself. When your side is like, your fact checking is fucking discriminating against me. It's like, you're so close to getting it. You're so close to understanding the thing that it is that you are saying. Like,
well, yeah. And that's it, is that the phraseology that, and we might play a bit of it, that Zuckerberg used in his little announcement video, which was very simple, just a simple chat from Mark Zuckerberg, was that, basically the fact checkers are biased, was his
right.
And that's and any there were going to any additional like sort of fact checking teams are going to be hosted out of Texas as opposed to the Bay Area from now on because of their political biases. I was like, hang on, so Texans don't have political biases? Like that?
Oh, wow.
But political biases don't exist in Texas, I guess, only in California? That's interesting.
The business rules in Texas are a lot more liberal,
Yes,
I think, is probably.
Yeah.
I guess, anyhow, here's Mark Zuckerberg. Let's see if we can hear his thoughts
having a chat.
with Donald Trump's dick in his mouth.
Hey everyone. I want to talk about something important today because it's time to get back to our roots around free expression on Facebook and Instagram. I started building social media to give people a voice. I gave a speech at Georgetown 5 years ago about the importance of protecting free expression, and I still believe this today. But a lot has happened over the last several years. There's been widespread debate about potential harms from online content. Governments and legacy media have pushed to censor more and more. A lot of this is clearly political, but there's also a lot of legitimately bad stuff out there. Drugs, terrorism, child exploitation. These are things that we take very seriously, and I want to make sure that we handle responsibly. So we built a lot of complex systems to moderate content. But the problem with complex systems is they make mistakes. Even if they accidentally censor just 1% of posts, that's millions of people. And we've reached a point where it's just too many mistakes and too much censorship. The recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point towards once again prioritizing speech. So we're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms. More specifically, here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to get rid of fact checkers and replace them with community notes, similar to X, starting in the US. After Trump first got elected in 2016, the legacy media wrote non-stop about how misinformation was a threat to democracy. We tried in good faith to address those concerns without becoming the arbiters of truth. But the fact checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US. So over the next couple of months, we're going to phase in a more comprehensive community notes system. Second, we're going to simplify our content policies and get rid of a bunch of restrictions on topics like immigration and gender that are just out of touch with mainstream discourse. What started as a movement to be more inclusive has increasingly been used to shut down opinions and shut out people with different ideas, and it's gone too far. So I want to make sure that people can share their beliefs and experiences on our platforms. Third, we're changing how we enforce our policies to reduce the mistakes that account for the vast majority of censorship on our platforms. We used to have filters that scanned for any policy violation. Now, we're going to focus those filters on tackling illegal and high-severity violations. And for lower severity violations, we're going to rely on someone reporting an issue before we take action. The problem is that the filters make mistakes, and they take down a lot of content that they shouldn't. So by dialing them back, we're going to dramatically reduce the amount of censorship on our platforms. We're also going to tune our content filters to require much higher confidence before taking down content. The reality is that this is a trade-off. It means we're going to catch less bad stuff, but we'll also reduce the number of innocent people's posts and accounts that we accidentally take down. Fourth, we're bringing back civic content. For a while, the community asked to see less politics because it was making people stressed. So we stopped recommending these posts. But it feels like we're in a new era now, and we're starting to get feedback that people want to see this content again. So we're going to start phasing this back into Facebook, Instagram, and Threads while working to keep the communities friendly and positive. Fifth, we're going to move our trust and safety and content moderation teams out of California, and our US-based content review is going to be based in Texas. As we work to promote free expression, I think that it will help us build trust to do this work in places where there is less concern about the bias of our teams.
In Texas, there's less concern about bias, apparently. Where are all the complaints that the California team are biased coming from? Can we geolocate those?
Texas?
I reckon some of them are in Texas. And also, can I just argue with his very first thing he said in that video, like minutes ago, which was, I started Facebook to give people a voice. No, you started it to rate hot women at your university.
Yeah, and compare them to farm animals.
There's literally a movie about it. Let's be honest.
I recently, so I've been on like a kind of a social media hyper focus this last couple of weeks, a bit of a social media jag. So read through The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. I'm reading The Anxious Generation now. Rewatched The Social Network. And I was just like, Yeah, Mark Zuckerberg is a fucking sociopath, man. Like, this guy will stop at nothing to make $1. Like, this guy, like, the more, I remember because that film came out in 2010, The Social
Old
Network.
film, yeah.
It was pretty quick on the Mark Zuckerberg phenomena. He started Facebook in 2005, 2006, something like that.
Some of that, yeah.
Yeah.
And it really only sort of like got to prominence in 06, 07. So like 3 years after that, to have a narrative history or an imagined narrative history told through, about the rise of that company was actually pretty quick on its heels. But like, there's one thing I can say about that film is Aaron Sorkin fucking nailed it. The guy's a sociopath. Like, he sucks, and he will do and say whatever it takes to whomever in order to have preferential treatment from government. And this, as you say, Tom, like, you joked about him having his, Trump's cock in his mouth. But like, this is the most blowjob to Trump statement that one could ever give. He's literally citing Trump and Elon as the reasons for him doing what he's doing. Like, well, because Trump won the election, it seems like there's a cultural turning point, which means...
a lot of our users are going to want to,
we're just going to abandon all our
queer
principles.
people. Yeah, they're going to want to call queer people mentally ill.
The gender thing really...
We have to allow that.
The gender thing really concerned me because it's like, oh, this is just going to become an anti-trans platform now because all of that stuff is now going to be allowed and surfaced and promoted. On top of that, they're, sort of bringing back civic content, which is just coded language for like, you can argue about politics again with your fucking psycho uncle. Like... It's going to become exactly what X has become, and he's doing it preemptively to assuage Trump, like to fluff him up.
I think that's part of it. I actually think it's more self-interested.
He stood there with his hand on his heart and while the J6 choir was singing, next to Trump. He's doing this because of... all of them are doing. They're coming down to Mar-a-Lago to kiss the ring. He donated $1 million to his inauguration fund. Bezos is doing it. All the billionaires are coming to bend the fucking knee. That's exactly what this is.
That's part of it. But think about what Tom said. So, in the US, and I'm happy to be corrected, but Facebook and Instagram, a lot of, like, they're not growing at the same rate they used to. Let's put it that way.
No, because they're dog shit platforms. No one wants to use them. I haven't been on Facebook in years.
And so and obviously that affects their advertising revenue, right?
Yeah.
So this is really, it's a business decision to try and get people back on the platform who they've previously alienated in the United States.
He's wearing a $900,000 watch, Adam, in this video. I don't think the business of Facebook is suffering. They're making plenty of money, okay?
I mean, I'm sure it's plenty, but it's not at the same rate, right?
Yeah. They're not growing in users, but they are growing in revenue. They've had a fantastic couple of quarters, revenue-wise, right? So they're doing just fine. Now, the thing that
kind of annoys me about this is that, I mean, apart from everything else,
I still have some Facebook shares, just full disclosure. That's why I know what their revenue is like. Because I knew when I bought those shares that Mark Zuckerberg was a sociopath who would stop at nothing to make every single dollar that it was physically possible for him to
return to shareholders.
Yes.
So in that video, he buries the lead. Right. So he's talking about we've got issues with censorship and we've got biased fact checkers. And that's the first thing he talks about. The real issue with censorship,
recruit other fact checkers. That'd be too hard.
I mean, that's a minority.
We're just going to turn it into the cantina from Star Wars. We're just going to turn it into the worst place you've ever been.
You think about the amount of posts and stuff that happen through either Instagram or Facebook or even on WhatsApp, right? Or Threads now. Like the fact checking stuff is that covers a small amount of posts that are on that platform. The real thing that blocks content, that moderates content, is their AI and their algorithm, okay? And I know, and look, he's right, it's not very good. It takes a blanket approach, and it does block a lot of stuff, like whether that be through images or text or whatever else. And people get their shit banned, and then the problem is because they fired half their customer service staff, there's no rights of reply, right? Like I had my account banned because someone hacked it. Fair enough. It was compromised, shut it down. But I had no way to verify. There was no recourse
customer
of being
service.
Hey, what happened? Can you tell me?
Because Adam, you're not the customer. You're the fuel that makes the jet engine run. Exactly. You're not a fucking customer. The advertisers are the customers.
Exactly right. But what they've realized is because I guess everything's become more politically divisive and people have had all their shit banned, and like even businesses, like, and this is the thing, like, so their customers, which are Facebook business pages, right? They've had a lot, like heaps of, like people doing selling flowers, right? That kind of thing. Have had their stuff banned through various, or their accounts shut down. Maybe they've been hacked. Maybe it's something they've posted. Maybe they've liked something, whatever it may be, right? And then there's no recourse, or there is recourse, but it's very slow, and then people go, well, fuck this platform, I'm moving off it. So that's a real problem they've faced. So this is.
This is not the solution to that.
It's not, and this is exactly right. No. It's not the solution. Rather than what you need to do is make your platform better, make the algorithm better, make the AI better, employ more customer service staff, employ more fact checkers. Exactly right. So this is a profit-led decision, and the political 100%. Aspect ties into it. And I would say that, look,
I would argue that it is the idea of his growth is directly tied into, and his money, Facebook Meta's money, is directly tied into notions of how they're going to be regulated by potentially
dear God,
hostile.
Please don't regulate.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Right. So the profitability and like him kissing the ring argument are the same thing as far as I'm concerned. I don't think Mark Zuckerberg has any principles whatsoever. Like his MMA bro now and going and doing wrestling and fucking Dana White's on the board now, and like it's literally just like the red team is in power now, so we are going to bend the knee and show them that we're happy to play ball. And there's something that's really concerned me about in a broader sense is the preemptive bending of the knee, the kind of like pre-submitting that all of these various like, what's the point of being a billionaire? What's the point of being Mark Zuckerberg and having...
If you can't wield that power.
What's the point of having fuck you money if you can't occasionally say fuck you to someone? Like, and that's someone who's making you say and do things that aren't aligned with your principles. What is the point of having a couple $100 billion if you can't tell that person to go fuck himself? Like...
Because shareholders...
Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, they're just they're just flocking to this guy to come and kiss the ring and donating to the inaugural fund. That's what they do when we haven't donated to the campaign because we didn't think you were going to win and we kind of hate you and you suck. But now that you've won, we'll donate to the inauguration fund so you can have a big party, and that's our way of making it up to you. Is to go, sorry, we didn't donate earlier. Please accept this peace offering of $1 million. Please don't hurt me.
And for people's reference, to be clear, Trump was banned from Meta for years, and then suddenly in 2023, they were like, you can come back on, bro.
Wait a minute,
all of a sudden,
right-wing nut jobs complaining.
All of a sudden, his speech didn't violate the policies, and they were able to restore him in Jan of 2023 when he seemed like a realistic possibility again. I'm very concerned about all of these institutions pre-capitulating to the fascist regime. Like they haven't even done anything yet. And everyone's just like, oh, let me get that for you, sir. Let me let me just bend the knee just in case, just preemptively. That's a concern.
And so, for reference, it's starting in the US. This will not apply to the European Union because they've got stricter regulations over there. Australia is very concerned. Albanese and Australian Green Senator Sarah Hanson-Young have been deeply concerned about it. I don't actually, and the article's not 100% clear as to whether this does apply to Australia. We're referencing the SBS here, but they do say that it will start in the US, and then I guess we'll see what happens.
It's going to have an effect, certainly.
Yeah,
definitely. I mean,
keep in mind, Australia still has its, the
16-year-old ban thing.
Yeah.
16 and under ban coming in like 9 months or whatever.
The thing that's so galling about this is that the announcement from Meta is called More Speech and Fewer Mistakes. And it's like, this absolutely will not deliver that. It will give you more mistakes and fewer speech.
It's going to deliver more speech, all right. It's just, it'll be all like gay people aren't real and all that sort of stuff.
Trans people both shouldn't exist and also don't exist at the same time.
And I just want to reiterate that the current version of Meta is like their content moderation platform is not perfect. And I can completely understand that there are people out there who are like, fuck these guys. But the response to it should not be, as George said, kiss the ring.
Let the Nazis run free.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, it just erodes public trust and democracy. Because what's going to happen is
Yeah.
the algorithm is going to, like, because once you drop all that, the algorithm is going to push or preference anything that gets lots of reactions, and the things that get lots of reactions are political things,
Are really
things-
divisive.
Political,
and really
divisive,
shit.
yeah, that people argue over. Exactly right. Which is
Yeah.
why the New York Times did that whole series, Rabbit Hole, which talked about how a regular, male in his 20s, just watching regular content on YouTube, inevitably falls down this radicalization rabbit hole because they keep seeing, and they
Same
get
shit.
served a piece of political content, and then they get a little bit of a rise out of them and goes, oh, I'm going to serve you a more extreme version of that piece of political content, and then a more extreme version. Then all of a sudden you're mainlining, Andrew Tate straight into your fucking eyeballs like it's Clockwork Orange. Like, we know what happens. We've done it, and basically he said, oh, we tried to there was a bit in there where he goes, essentially like, we tried to partner with the Democrats and like, but they were all like whinging about how, the mainstream media kept having a go at us because of how we were handling. So it's like, he's like, oh, I wanted to be in with the Democrats, but they wouldn't have me. And so like, I'm just going to go alt-right psycho and just go with the side that'll have us. You know what I mean? Like, it's the same thing that Elon kind of did, because he was nominally critical of Trump. And then the algorithms of the platform that he owns rotted his brain. And now he has become
He
the
fell
full
for his own shit.
black MAGA psycho nonsense that he's spouting. Like there is an algorithmic pipeline that we know pushes young, impressionable men towards the far right. And it's like, when it's like listening to Joe Rogan talk about smoking DMT and like, investigation alien and that sort of stuff, it's like, it's kind of like harmless. But when it gets to like how you vote or like storming the Capitol or, like there is an inevitable outcome from this pipeline, which results in not all of them, but a select handful of people exercising political violence. You see it in like people like Anders Breivik, mass shooters, things like that. People who, blow
And I'm
themselves
sure-
up, and like it's there is a pipeline between far right radical Turner Diaries, starting over here in the late 90s stuff, and there is a direct line between those people and far right reactionary violence. Like it's established.
Not to mention, Russia and China looking at this going, great, we can just get our
Sick.
fucking bot
Open
farms
slather.
going and let's go.
Vasily, fire up the bot farms again. Let's go.
Can I quote something from the post from Meta that talked about
Sure.
this? That I think is a bit crazy. So it's the article that includes the video from Zuckerberg we were hearing before, but this is attributed to Joel Kaplan, the Chief Global Affairs Officer,
Who's a Republican toady who they've put in there.
There we go. So I just want to read this this paragraph from it under their section called "Allowing More Speech," which says, "We want to undo the mission creep that has made our rules too restrictive and too prone to over-enforcement.
They're
We're
just trying
getting
so
rid-
hard not to say woke. They're like
George,
daring themselves not to say the
get
word.
this out. Let me get this out. We're getting rid of a number of restrictions on topics like immigration, gender identity, and gender that are the subject of frequent political discourse and debate. It's not right that things can be said on TV or the floor of Congress, but not on our platform. They shouldn't be said there either. The kinds of things you're talking about, if it's like, that trans people are both the worst and don't exist, shouldn't be said in Congress either. Like, we shouldn't be entertaining this kind of craziness.
Yeah, if Marjorie Taylor Greene can talk her shit about Jewish space lasers, then why can't I?
Yeah, it's more like that's bad too.
Yeah.
Like
Terrible
I
litmus test. Yeah.
I saw something today actually. I'd like to do more research into it to see whether or not it's entirely accurate. But I thought the premise was great at least, which is that like when people were saying that the changes that they're proposing would mean it's now no longer like against their content moderation policies or whatever to call being LGBTQ an illness. Like, no, that would be allowed to be said again. And they referenced like a time in, I think it was Sweden, that it was still considered an illness or it could be called an illness, to be queer, and people protested by calling in sick to work, saying they felt a bit gay. Sort of like,
That's so
yeah,
funny.
it's just like, I'm feeling a bit gay today,
Oh,
so
I
I'm
love
not
the
coming to
Swedes.
work. And I'm like, that's great. Like, so if that's how this ends up, everyone should do that. Like, I'm encouraging it. Call in sick to work because I don't know, you're attracted to a man you saw on the bus. Like, I don't know.
And I guess the other thing is it does, like any batshit stuff that Trump says is now sort of, I guess, free. You know, it's open slather on the platform. So things like we're going to take over Greenland, the Panama Canal,
God,
and we're
so
going to
stupid.
rename the what's it called, the Gulf of Mexico.
Gulf of Mexico.
The Gulf of America.
Gulf.
It's so
like that
stupid.
stuff now becomes up for discussion, which it's fucking nuts. Like
This is what fascist regimes do. This is an established tactic, right? The fire hose of disinformation, right? You put out news story after news story of like some nationalist dog shit that occupies the headlines for a week, and what you're not talking about is Pete Hegseth looking on track to still be his Trump's cabinet nominee. You're not talking about California being on fire. Like, it literally sucks the oxygen out of the room because journalists are tripping over their own balls to write the latest story about, fucking Trump said this fucking crazy. Bro, did you hear this fucking crazy thing about how Trump said about Greenland? And it's like, and they're not talking about the serious actual corruption, the kleptocracy, the gerontocracy filled with 80-year-old billionaires, oligarchy that's being established. Like, I don't care about Greenland. They're not going to take over Greenland. It's not going to happen. I don't want to hear about it.
Yeah,
Shut up.
Canada's not going to be a state.
Canada's not going to be a state. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
Did you know that the Greenland thing though is actually there is some precedent to that with
And it just fucking worked. And it just worked on you, Adam.
it just worked. But it's interesting. Watch the video. So Truman tried to buy Greenland after World War II for like $100 million. And of course the Danes were like,
No.
fucking no. But that's one of the reasons is how NATO was formed. So basically NATO was formed and then the Danes were like, great, well, we're all allies. So you can just chuck an Air Force base there and that allies your security concerns. And there still is to this day, there is either one or maybe a couple of US Air Force bases in Greenland.
But that's like the US has military. I think that was the basis of the plot for the season 2 of The Diplomat was like the whole, there was some conspiracy and it all revolved around having bases around Western Europe there to intercept potential Russian like fucking submarines or whatever. Yeah. So like, you're like, the US has interest in having military bases all over the world and whatever. Like, and they do. They still have military bases. There's one in Darwin. There's one in fucking Germany. There's they're all over the place. That's what empire does. But like the idea that it's a serious conversation that we should be having at this point in time
is
and
no doubt
over and above other conversations that are serious conversations and the idea that Trump is actually thoughtful about it is a serious person with regards to this issue is nonsense, right? Like it will simply not happen, right? So the idea
crazy
that we're discussing that and not like Dana White, head of the UFC, getting appointed to like Facebook's board of directors, like, that's fucking crazy. That is real news. We're talking about fascist, authoritarian, personalistic. What's the word? Personal.
Cult of personality.
A cult of personality around the leader. Yeah. Like that is far more concerning and like newsworthy to me than like,
Greenland.
will like they can't even make Washington DC the 51st state. You know what I mean? Like Puerto Rico is still a protectorate. Like it doesn't. None of this is happening.
Also, like Greenland wants independence. Like it's a whole fucking thing.
Yeah, exactly. They don't want to be anyway. It's like besides the point.
Yeah.
What the people of Greenland want. Who cares?
It's a great thing to discuss because it's so dumb. But like by doing this, we are feeding into the same fucking sinkhole of information.
You took us here, Adam. Now we're here.
I did because we're a news and comedy podcast, and it's kind of fucking funny because it's so stupid.
There's a lot of what this entering into the Trump regime. We're still not in the Trump regime. He still hasn't taken power.
Meanwhile, Biden's just like could be dead. I don't know.
Asleep
Biden
at the wheel. Who knows?
I don't know.
The thing that this is all really reminding me of is like the late 1800s, the Belle Epoque, the robber barons, the fucking John D. Rockefeller, the people who own all the train lines, own all the oil, and just become like fabulously wealthy. And, John D. Rockefeller, was a Republican politician as well. It's like this time where politics and like billionaires and big money were all kind of confluenced in this one thing. And what the 20th century did was kind of break up that monopoly. You had antitrust enforcement. A lot of these companies were broken up by the United States government, and it prevented a lot of the worst kinds of excesses that these robber barons were able to perpetuate on the political system, and created the basis for what was 50, 60 years of the Pax Americana, the American peace and growth and prosperity that, kind of took off from the late 40s onwards. I don't think we're going to get that this time because the government is stacked with toadies. There's not going to be any antitrust legislation when it comes to AI. Like Lena Khan, who's the head of the FTC, probably the best member of the Biden administration by far. Like, she's going to be kicked off. She's not going to be left to allow to pursue her agenda against big tech consolidation and all that sort of stuff. She's going to get kicked out. Mm-hmm. So you have to wonder, what is it that's actually going to prevent us from entering the darkest timeline with regards to all of this stuff? And it's just like, well, nothing. It's just we're going to lose. That's what's happening. Is like corporate consolidation, oligarchy, democratic backsliding. Like it's happening now.
Which is hilarious because that's the very thing that in theory all the Trump voters voted against, right? Yeah, that's the crazy thing.
Throwing a bomb into the system. Yeah.
Anyway, speaking of corrupt.
So Mark Zuckerberg dead at 36. Says social media sites should not fact check posts. So I don't know if that's if that's true or not, but maybe we'll get a community note. Who knows? That's from the shovel.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of Mark Zuckerberg, renowned dog fucker, and then saying whatever afterwards. It's pretty great. Now, we've been shitting on America a lot for this, was it 50 minutes of the episode? Let's come home. Let's talk about our people. We've been violating human rights.
Just like George with irritable bowel. Let's take our shit home.
Yeah.
Christ. I'm gonna unpack that a little bit, but we'll just keep moving, Tom.
Yeah.
What's the story?
The UN
I like to poop at home.
Oh well, who doesn't? Specifically in your home. I exclusively shit in your home.
I just prefer to poo in my own home.
So what happens if you're at the shops?
Anxiety.
Intense anxiety. It's a race. Anyway, speaking of shit, Australia has violated a human rights treaty, according to a UN committee, by detaining a group of asylum seekers, including children, on Nauru, even after they were granted refugee status, because
playing the greatest hits of 80s, 90s, and today.
Yeah.
Gold 104. God, that's an golden oldie. Nauru detainees. That takes me back.
Yep. So a group of refugees. A group of refugees filed a complaint that they were still in arbitrary detention on Nauru following being granted asylum status.
So they're being granted refugee status, and yet they were still being detained.
Yes, and they were still being detained, and they filed a complaint about that. And the UN Human Rights Committee, which, according to the ABC, monitors the legally binding 1966 International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and they found that Australia had violated two provisions of the treaty. One on arbitrary detention, and one on protecting the right to challenge their detention in court. Because we are terrible.
And the wheels of justice turn slowly, because this was a petition filed in 2016. And it was actually a group who arrived via boat and were transferred from Christmas Island in 2014. What else happened in 2014? Oh, that's right. I mean, Operation Sovereign Borders, I think, was in full effect by that point.
Yeah, 2013 is when we sort of really kicked the magic boat stopper.
So the magic boat stopper,
Yeah.
meant that they were sent to Nauru, and they lacked access to sufficient water, healthcare. This is what the UN said. Nearly all the miners suffer, and because they were aged between 14 and 17 years old, by the way, nearly all the miners suffered a deterioration of well-being, including weight loss, self-harm, kidney problems, and insomnia. Now, if you think back, for those people who don't have a memory past 2020, the Nauru solution, and this was set up by I think it was the Rudd government at the time, was Rudd, Operation Sovereign Borders. It was thrown together pretty fucking quick. They sent a bunch of army dudes over there who slapped up a bunch of tents and then were like, great, have at it. And then they handed it over to Nauru as per this agreement they've got and said, you're responsible for this now, and wash their hands clean. And that's the excuse Australia still uses this to this day is, well, it's not our... It's
not happening in Australia, so it's not our responsibility.
However, the UN found that the Nauru facility counted as being within Australia's jurisdiction in 2016. So basically the UN said, well, we see what you're doing. Just because you put your facility in someone else's country doesn't mean you're not responsible for what happens there. You're paying for it. You're organising it. You're sort of pulling the strings as to what's happening. Like, they're your responsibility. And Australia responded, nana foo-foo. Bounces off me and sticks to you.
Yeah, committee member El Haiba, I thought, put it quite well, which is the outsourcing of operations does not absolve states of accountability.
To which Australia said,
nah. Offshore detention facilities are not human rights free zones for the state party.
Nah, because like Guantanamo, so it's fine. Don't worry about it.
And of course, the Australian government, now that there's been this ruling, as per the treaty, there will be zero repercussions for Australia because they're going to. They've made a finding. The UN's made a finding. They've sent us a letter telling us how very angry they are, and we've read that letter and we said.
But I think it's just worth pointing out that like I know we talk about Scott Morrison and we talk about Peter Dutton all the time with like awful treating of like immigrants and asylum seekers and things like that. But this is a both sides of the Labor Liberal aisle issue. Like, the Rudd government slapped this together. Yes, for a large portion of the 10 years or 15 years or whatever it's been, a Liberal government's been in control. But all the people involved are still kind of, like, most of them are still kind of around. Like, yeah, it's the thing of, like, I know we're all dreading the concept of, like, a Peter Dutton win this upcoming election. And so, yes, like, I'm not happy with the Labor Party, and shitting on the Labor Party might hand, like, a Peter Dutton thing there. But they're all fucking responsible for this. And it's disgusting. And we need to remember
Peter
that
Dutton in
when
particular,
we vote.
Right?
Yes, Peter Dutton in particular. But
with the roles that he's had in Home Affairs and Immigration.
Yeah, Peter Dutton in particular, but also like the fact that for the last couple years, like, hey, Albo, your government's been overseeing this shit, and I haven't seen you do anything to at least even say that you might do something different. Like,
there's been a lot of asylum seekers that are like housed in hotels now and stuff. Like, it still hasn't.
Oh yeah, there was the whole when Djokovic was in one of them, right?
Yeah.
Fucking a couple Australian Opens ago, and we're all talking about the quality of the detention center that's like in the middle of.
Oh, he reckons he was poisoned at that facility.
Okay,
all
right. Did you hear that?
Okay.
Yeah, I heard that.
Anyway,
So yeah, we're terrible, and Albo, fucking, I hold you responsible for this as well as all the people before you. So yeah, human rights violator. Hope you like that on your legacy.
Speaking of legacy, the South Korean presidential crisis continues, and Yoon Suk Yeol has had a warrant out for his arrest for a couple of days now, for a while. And he's kind of
following his little, let's have a snifter. Let's have a snifter of a coup for a couple hours, and then go, nah, all right, fine, you got me.
So they impeached him. It didn't work. And anyway, so the end result, the latest result is that there was a warrant out for his arrest. Anyway, so now it's basically the president and his security forces versus the police. The president's retreated to his compound,
is this Far Cry 6?
Guarded. It is Far Cry 6. Yeah, literally. Yeah. And now there's a warrant. The warrant has an expiry date. So the police are like, what do we What do we
Wait.
do? Do we
Wait.
do we have to go in gun? Do I have to go SWAT team to go in guns blazing
To get
and start
like the former
shooting-
boss, like the
Yeah.
former like dude?
Yeah,
It sounds like a pretty good final mission. I'm not gonna lie.
it does sound like a pretty good final mission.
Yeah.
And there's been huge protests in South Korea, by the way. Like people and like
Oh,
from
they're not
both
thrilled about
sides.
this.
There's like people that are like for the president about this as well. So they've been protesting sort of against each other. Meanwhile, the president's kind of just been sitting in his compound, and the authorities are like, well, I guess we might have to go in shooting because there's armed guards outside.
It's turned into
his
Waco.
compound.
This is crazy.
Yeah.
That's
nuts.
insane. Wait, but the warrant has an expiry.
Yeah. So they had to
you're
extend
telling
it.
him-
They had to
you're
extend
telling
on
him-
Tuesday. They had to extend it.
Yeah, but they're going to
because
keep
was gonna
extending it.
expire.
It's got to be like some administrative rule where it's like, oh, the warrant can only be for 7 days or whatever. But like, they're not going to just going to go, you got us this time. All right,
Yeah,
come
'cause
out, you got us.
But wait, okay, so if it's for something like
No
the president
warrant.
or whatever, they're going to keep extending it. But you're saying like warrants just have like an expiry time. So if you can just wait it out,
No, that's
then
not
there's
the
no
lesson.
warrant anymore. That seems to be what they're telling them, though.
It's
like
got,
if
like,
you
real
roll up in your bunker long enough,
Pablo
then we
Escobar
give up.
vibes, where it's like, I built my own prison and I've decided that this is where I will serve out my sentence. And they're like, no. The government has to do that. You don't get to decide how this
No.
shakes out. Like,
yeah, look
Meanwhile-
at me. I'm imposing my own house arrest.
yeah.
See?
I've
Meanwhile-
really learned my
I'm
lesson.
done. No, I'm done.
The presidential office has tried to go after a bunch of YouTube like filmmakers because they've been outside the property filming stuff, and they're like, oh, you can't film this. They've like filed lawsuits because like you can't film a military like
Okay.
complex.
Yeah, all right, buddy. Important military stuff
Anyway.
happening in there.
It's like, how can you ignore the warrant on one side, but then also use the same legal system to like try and sue people or whatever?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's fucking dumb. But anyway, so that's literally there's a literal Mexican standoff in South Korea, and
Yeah,
we'll see what happens.
Far Cry 7, South Korea sounds like it's gonna pop off.
Yep.
Kim Jong Il's just
Well, Kim Jong Il's very dead.
Oh,
but,
Kim Jong-un,
Kim
rather.
Jong-un in North Korea. Yeah.
is just loving life at the moment. Just got his pyramid hands, just eating some popcorn, just checking out, see what's going on.
it's interesting because in Ukraine, the North Koreans are getting their shit pushed in, and there's
really?
thousands and thousands of North Koreans that have been casualties, and they're having to send more troops over to replace those casualties.
It's weird that the warm bodies that Russia wanted for cannon fodder ended up becoming cannon fodder. That's the strangest thing. Russia's never done that to anyone, double crossed them like that. That's crazy.
Yeah. Weren't they also finding that the North Korean troops that they sent to help Putin were getting addicted to internet pornography because they're now outside North Korea's?
I did not hear that. Is that
really?
real?
Yeah. This was something from back in November.
Or did you
I'm
see that
pretty
on
sure-
Facebook?
No, I just looked it up again there, and news sources are at least talking about it. But
That'd be a fun. If that's true, that is hilarious.
I mean,
Bro, I can't find the enemy. I'm so I'm just spent.
Okay.
I'm just wanked.
Okay.
I'm completely
Sorry.
wanked out. I just can't.
Okay.
I physically cannot.
Can I say sorry? I hate to give a win to Sky News. I just want to preface this. I hate to give a win to Sky News, but they're one of the places when just in my quick Google search reported on.
I mean, of course, they're reporting on it as well. It's the kind of
But
stuff that's like right up there.
I'm sorry, but the first sentence of the article, I think they've taken this from the New York Post by the looks of it. So I guess because they're all News Corp. But the first line is "hardened soldiers indeed."
It's so
Well
stupid.
done. I'll give you
It's
that.
so stupid. Media is dead.
Yeah, but here we go.
killed it.
The
It's dead.
The first sentence, just to give you the article, was North Korean military men who joined the war front in Ukraine on behalf of Russia have unfettered internet access for the first time and may be using it to watch tons of pornography, according to a report that a Pentagon official was unable to confirm.
So it's hearsay, but it's a funny concept.
Possibly bullshit.
Yeah.
But
yeah, so I didn't make it up, is my point.
yeah, it's our final story for today, and it's a little.
Let's do a silly one.
Let's do a silly one. And look, you know what? It's a new year. Let's all start some things on some positive. Let's start off on a positive vibe. And that
Wipe the
was
slate clean. Haven't you ever wanted to just let your
start
past
again.
sins, just let them be washed away by the healing hand of Jesus and just
Indeed.
begin again, born
What?
again.
Hang on, what?
I need my brothers. I need to tell you about a man, a carpenter, who was about
Okay.
our age.
All right, let's.
You know, there was another man who was a
humble
hardened
man.
soldier. Jesus Christ.
So the ABC posted this absolute shite of a story sometime after New Year's Eve, and apparently in Zambia, a police officer, or a police officer,
Yeah, police officer.
decided, while he was wasted, decided that it was a great idea for the new year, new me. I'm going to release 13 prisoners, some of whom were, been charged with assault and robbery and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, serious crimes that have been alleged. The thing that got me about this story was that the police service said Inspector Feary was, quote, in a state of intoxication, unquote, at 10 a.m. on December 31st.
Yeah,
when he
this
took the
wasn't
cell keys
like
from a colleague and released 13 prisoners. So it wasn't like,
it wasn't
3,
10,
2,
9.
1. Yeah.
And then
Happy
he's
New Year. He goes,
blowing
you know
the
what?
party poppers. Hey, fellas, come
How's
on
it
out.
going, boys? Get out of here.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that. It was like this guy was pre-gaming from New Year's Eve by the sounds of it.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
I guess he was
10
probably working. He's probably working New Year's Eve, so he's like, "I'll have my party the night before," and just kept going. Do you know what I mean?
Or maybe he was like, it's New Year's Eve, it's 10 a.m. and I'm having a good time, and I reckon these guys know how to party. So like,
well, he allegedly said to them as he released them, both women and men, "You are free to cross over into the new year." And isn't that a nice little?
Which just sounds like drunk talk. That sounds like the drunkest talk.
Shock horror. None of the suspects returned.
Of course not.
Wild, weird, and wild.
Yeah.
A manhunt has been launched. The Zambia Police Service has intensified efforts to locate and apprehend the escapees. Unquote.
Fuck. Yeah, that's bad. Like, wow. There's easier ways to quit your job, friend. I mean,
I'm trying to get fired.
Some goodwill, man.
Yeah. You don't
Pass on
have
that
to
goodwill.
you don't have to put the community at risk if you don't want to be a police officer anymore.
I like, obviously, yeah, he was, okay, it says he was intoxicated. Obviously he was. But like, what's the motivation? Like, I just don't understand why you would want to, like, whether you were drunk or not, why you would want to release prisoners.
Wow, maybe you really hate your job. Like you are, like, some people take a shit on the boss's desk on the way out, or you could be like, how do I really fuck up their day for like not valuing me and assisting my growth? And
maybe he's just fed up with the system, man. Maybe he's fed up with the Zambian, jurisdiction system. So he thought, what way to fight the man by
if he just had one more quarterly review, maybe it would have stopped all this, like if you just
some clearer KPIs,
just a clearer, just a clearer JD, like that would have, kind of tightened things up for him. So
I am glad I'm
maybe
not
a pizza
at a level
party.
I'm glad I'm not at a level of corporate where I knew what a JD was.
Job description.
There we go.
It's all right. You know what Charlie XCX is, and when you mentioned that at the start of the show, I was dumbfounded. So
Brat Summer. Let's
On
go.
that
I
note,
want to hear those club classics.
On that note, we have been, we are, and we always will be Unnatural Selection, reporting to you from our Brat Summer here in Australia. Make sure you go to our website. I've completely lost the thread.
Listen to us on all the things that have, do, or ever will exist.
At Unnatural Show. No, fuck. So it's a website. Go to our website. How have I lost it? Go to the website.
It's a place you can go on the World Wide Web.
On the interwebs.
And it's like it's a site. They call them sites, even though it's like even though it's a web page. It's a web page on a website.
So you go to www.unnaturalshow.com, and that is the website, and you can go to there. Make sure you follow us on all the social medias. I'm back that have, do, or ever will exist at Unnatural Show. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and mother flipping TikTok. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky under pain of death at George Tsipos.
You can follow me on Twitter at Tom D. Heath.
And you can follow me down to the South Korean presidential compound, where I will be videoing from afar to try and get some unfiltered access now into the Meta platform, because I can show what I want now. Freedom of speech, right? So I can just film the South Korean presidential compound.
The key is actually to
days.
find like a hill up somewhere behind and like scope it out, tag all the targets first, maybe do a helo jump into the location.
Adam,
Make sure you bring a sniper rifle just to
a silent sniper.
Sure
We're talking about Far Cry. Don't murder anyone.
Don't do this. This is a video
Adam,
game.
This is a bit.
Adam, you know what? That's Brat.
I don't.
Anyway, we're cutting that. I love your faces. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.